Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it. Hey guys, I just wanted to grab your attention because we've just created a brand new resource for you guys called the Exit Playbook, how to shift from operator to visionary leader. Now, this was based on a podcast that I did a few months ago and is the leadership blueprint for being able to help yourself successfully exit your business. Now, we go into many different things. We're going into some of the common symptoms of why founders get trapped in operations and what to look for and the impact that it actually has on you. We also go into some deep dive exercises that addresses some of the fears, some of the reflections, also how to basically let go of some of the control that you have, but more importantly, how to shift your identity within your business and how to align your strategy to your exit and how to challenge your belief systems, more importantly. Listen, it is a free playbook. The link is in the show description notes. Enjoy. I think you're going to find it a really useful resource. Take care.
I'm 32, juggling family, working full-time, and earning a bachelor's degree. At University of Phoenix, I earn career-relevant skills with every 5-week course. Skills I can use now, not just after graduation.
Earn skills in weeks, not years. Visit phoenix.edu.
Is your growth stuck because you're trying to do too much for too many people? What if the next breakthrough isn't about working harder, but actually focusing sharper on what you do? Now, in this episode, I'm going to show you how to pick one specific high-value problem that can reignite your growth, simplify your sales strategy, and make your business stand out from a crowded market. Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Strong. Welcome to this week's podcast. We're on The Business Strategist. Now, today we're going to be going through an amazing topic that we don't talk about specifically enough on this. And I'm going to be sharing with you the importance of niching down in your industry or whatever it is that you do, okay? And I'm going to give you a framework. Now, for you guys, if this is the very first time that you've listened to this, get yourself a pen and paper handy because there is going to be a number of exercises that I'm going to require you to do either with yourself or with your team. This is going to be a masterclass like no other. So let's jump straight in. And I'm going to specifically share with you what the framework is. Now, the framework is called focused. All right. Let me break that down for you. And then we're going to specifically go into depth and detail about what focused is in terms of the framework. Now the F stands for facing your resistance. Now, today we're going to be talking a little bit about resistance, but also about friction around the reasons of niching down. I'm going to share with you my own personal story around that. Then hopefully that should give you you should feel a bit more relatable around that. The O stands for own one problem. So identifying a single high valued problem and being able to solve that's best fit for your clients. So that's the O. The C stands for clarify your ideal customer persona. What that means is defining the exact audience who feels the exact problem most painfully and the premium solution that they would be willing to pay for. So we're going to be talking a little bit about turning from what I call a generalist into a specialist. And again, it doesn't matter if you're running a law firm, it doesn't matter if you're running an accountancy practice, or if you're a management consultant. You're going to be able to apply these principles that I teach you today very, very easily. The U stands for undertaking real world testing. What that basically means is the opportunity to collect data, right? So collecting data, testing a niche. And I'm going to share some examples of some ways in which you can test a particular niche to make sure that you are on point. The S stands for sharing stories that sell. So normally that's your own origin story, which is generally based around authenticity and showing vulnerability. And that could also be using things such as case studies and testimonials and so forth. The E stands for established pricing and packaging. So being able to transition from an hourly based mindset to more of a value proposition that you can package accordingly. And I'm going to, again, share some examples about how you could go about doing that. And then the last part is the evolution. So design evolution paths, which basically means how you're able to map out your niche over time. But more importantly, if you choose a lane, how can you then duplicate that and move into different types of niches into different areas of the business? So that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. Most of you know that I've been running a business since I was 11 years old. I've been an entrepreneur from a very, very long time. And it's really interesting because first things first is that we're all on a different journey. We all have our own challenges, frustrations, problems, what keeps us up at night. We all have different things, okay, going on in our lives. And I'll be the first to admit from a standpoint is that for many, 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 many years, I really struggled to understand why I should niche down. And I'm going to tell you why. So since I was 11, I have, over the time of the last 30 years, I've really, I suppose, developed a number of mindset and skill sets that, let's just face it, is very appealing to a lot of people. And I think where my resistance was, and again, maybe this is something that you can empathize more than anything else. And I think that the first thing is that I just didn't want to alienate my audience because, and what I mean by that is I didn't want to feel like I could, with my such broad knowledge, if you like, I didn't want to alienate the people that I was speaking to in a nutshell. So I had that as a resistance. The other resistance I had was the whole kind of like fear of missing out. And I didn't really want to lose out on those opportunities more than anything else. And I now realize that actually, especially from the date of this recording, over the last 3 to 6 months specifically, I'm now beginning to realize that actually the way that I'm working right now is just not sustainable. And so I've kind of like looked at it from my own consulting perspective and spoken to my team about it. And we've all come to the conclusion that actually we're being too broad in what we do. And that's really causing a lot of friction, but it's also creating a bit of an identity loss. I feel like I'm losing an identity part of it, but in the same way, I'm focusing specifically on a particular area of the business that I absolutely love and letting go of the things that I don't enjoy so much. And it's the same in any business, this friction and resistance and where it comes from. I think one of the exercises that I would like for you to do, and again, depend on if you're doing this on your own or if you're doing this with your team, is to sit down with your team, for example, and list out the resistance or the frictions as to why around the whole kind of nicheology. And I want you to differentiate between what's true and what is. So it's a belief system ingrained into our subconscious. And I want you to have a dialogue between you and your team, write out all of the reasons of why it isn't a good idea to narrow down, niche down it, but also I want you to counteract that. So I want you to have an open discussion around that. If you're doing this on your own, do it exactly the same way. Truth number 2 is generalist versus a specialist. Now, for most of you that are listening in, I can guarantee you that most of you are masters of what you do. You're hugely credible at what you do. I'm not here to tell you that you're not good at what you do. I know that everyone listening in are extremely good at what they do. However, there's a real big differentiation between a generalist and a specialist. Now, in your industry, a generalist is someone that is trying to mold their offers around the client. And the thing is, that's not going to work because the client is going to be focused specifically on, they're going to be probably more price conscious. But also, if you run a professional services firm, like a law firm, an accountancy practice, or whatever it might be, you're probably going to be tied to more around hourly rates, okay? And the thing is then I want you to focus specifically on the ROI, the transformation, like the true value of what the transformation means to the individual. So
meet the most capable CRV Honda has ever dreamed of. The all-new CRV Trail Sport Hybrid. With all-terrain tires and available enhanced traction control, it's built for wherever the day takes you. Heated front seats and a heated steering wheel, ideal for winter drives and crisp early starts. And with generous cargo space, it's ready for big gear and even bigger getaways. The CRV Trail Sport Hybrid. Learn more at honda.com/CRV.
if you think about going to a car mechanic, for example, right? You have a generalist car mechanic that does MOTs, for example, that might change a tire, that might do an oil change. They're all general things. But then when your car needs, say, I don't know, say the head gasket on your engine blows, then you're going to need a specialist because a general mechanic's not going to know how to replace the gasket of an engine. Okay, it's exactly the same in your business. So there's a real difference between generalist and expats, and there's a real difference in positioning as well with regards to pricing, with regards to scalability. There are so many different ways in which you can do that. So I really kind of want you to focus on outcomes versus deliverables. So shift cost to return on investment. And I feel like, again, thinking about like in your area, in your industry specifically, I want you to focus on all of the clients that you've worked with or customers that you worked with, okay? And think about all of the different clients. And as a team or as a collective, I want you to write down what are some of the biggest problems that you have solved, okay? And they might be more common ones, but you also enjoyed solving those problems because they've created the biggest transformation, okay, or the biggest outcomes. But they also, those people were prepared to pay more than someone that is looking for more generic advice. So I hope that kind of makes a lot of sense. Number 3. So I talked a little bit about clarifying your ideal customer persona, which really is talking about that one problem, one ICP, one solution. So again, really kind of laser down on the specific, and it could be something which is highly complex, right? Something that is a lot more, that has a lot more weight to it, if that makes sense. So rather than kind of category moving into a different industry, for example, it could be that you specialize more specifically in an area that you've identified. Let me give an example. My specialism is all around scaling and exiting of businesses. However, my specialism is working with legal firms that want to actually significantly add growth to their law firm through offering advisory services. And I've created a framework and a license model that they can use to be able to do that. That is more what we call specialism work, because it's focusing on one particular ICP, one particular problem, or one particular solution. All right. And that again is one example. So that is the C. The U is, how do you then test this particular niche? And there are many different ways in which you can test a niche. One of the ways, if you run, say, a SaaS company, for example, it could be collecting questionnaires. It could be a minimum viable product, okay? It could be landing pages, webinars. It could be wait lists. We use wait lists a lot to try to test a niche. Again, you can use different data points to ask specific questions. such as, if we built this or if we did this, what would it look like to you? What are the bells and the whistles? How much would you be prepared to pay for it between this and this over to what time period? Like, you can really get some very in-depth information and build something based around solving that one particular problem. Okay. So again, the importance of data collecting and understanding real world time data is going to be crucial. Okay. This is around crafting personal and client stories, and that could be using case studies, testimonials. But more importantly, what that does is it helps create that authenticity and relatability part of it. Now, the E stands for established pricing and packaging. So again, I kind of mentioned this shifting from kind of the hourly rate to more outcome-based premium packages. So if you really want to scale your business, grow and scale your business, think about this. Think about quality over quantity. Think about doing less rather than doing more. So simplification of doing something. All right. And a really good example of this is that we're working with an IT consultant right now, and they're working with one particular client. He's in IT strategy more specifically. And rather than kind of just be a generic consultant and charging per hourly, he's positioned himself as a fractional CIO. And the great thing about positioning him like that is because he is a specialist in his field. He can identify the blind spots in people's IT strategy and being able to create a solution around fixing that problem for that company. But he only has a certain amount of capacity. He only has capacity for 4 to 5 clients, and that's it. So he's positioned himself as a specialist in his field. How do you position yourself accordingly? So again, establishing pricing and packaging. So one of the exercises I like to do with your team is I'd like you to sit down and think to yourself, well, if we're doing these hourly rates, how can we package ourselves accordingly that increases profitability, but is a reflection of the clients that you're working with and the problems that you're trying to solve? Interestingly enough, I was working with a company in the legal services industry, and they were charging, that have kind of set rates for like powers of attorney, that have set rates for going to a client's home, that have set rates for, property searches and things like that. So it was very much very rigid in its way. And I challenged the team and I said, I would like you to go away and I would like you to bundle it in a particular way, package in it a particular way that speaks to one ICP. So for example, in her case, what were the clients that they really, really enjoyed working with? They liked working with more complicated, tailor-made, high level, or should we say not high level, more kind of estates over £1 million. So she can charge much higher premiums rather than kind of, trying to be the jack of all trades by basically offering services to 70-year-old Marjorie that lives in a council estate. So again, focusing specifically in a particular industry and packaging it accordingly is again going to help shift your mindset accordingly. So that's the E. And then the D, which is the design of the evolution path. What that basically means is once you've established your niche and you've written it out, okay, and you really understand the problems and you're getting a lot of traction within that lane, is then how can you then grow exponentially and turn that focus into another lane? All right. Another example here is I was working with a law firm, believe it or not. Their specialism was all in family law, And what we decided to do is the founder had a really big passion for motorsport. And so what we did is rather than just focusing on family law, which is what she was losing passion for, is I said, well, why don't you create an expansion to your product ecosystem and create a lane for motorsport law, for example. So now she has 2 parts of the business in law, And again, that is an example of niching down on a particular focus. And she was now focused on working with drivers and helping them with their contracts to make sure that they're not being shafted. So that is really micro niching down into a particular lane. So that is just a number of examples that I wanted to share with you. So in correlation, I just want to wrap up our call for today. So first thing we covered was the focused framework. And what that standard for is really kind of understanding. Number one was facial resistance. So we talked about the resistance and the internal friction of the reasons why, what keeps you stuck as a company, basically. Differentiating between myth and fact. What is a myth? What is a fact? And to have an internal discussion and to challenge those thought processes. That's the first thing. Secondly, owning one problem. Okay. So having a discussion within your team and identifying what was the one core problem, and it could be complicated, it could be high level, whatever it is, that was very high value, that was a good fit for your clients, and you enjoyed it, it was most profitable. Well, what was the one problem that really stuck out for you? C, clarifying your ideal customer persona. Again, defining who the actual audience is in terms of their emotional and psychological triggers, who feels that problem the most, and who is willing to pay for premium solutions. So kind of coming away from the whole kind of hourly based to more kind of value based offerings. U, which is undertaking real world testing, which basically means is collecting data, understanding how to test your niche. And then we discussed a lot around minimal viable products, how to validate your niche more specifically, and developing something based around the conversations that you're having with. All right. Now, the S stands for sharing stories at sales. So basically creating authority, creating social proof, using case studies, using testimonials as well to, again, create authenticity, but more around unique selling proposition, how you're different from your competition. The E, establish pricing and packaging. So going from a more generic base price outcome to more premium packages. So I talked about the importance of quality over quantity. And then the D, which is an evolution or the design of further evolution paths, which is saying, okay, we're in one particular lane. How can we then expand that into another vertical within your business? So guys, listen, I've given you some great ideas. I've given you some exercises. I'd love to know if you follow this framework, and you should. Trust me, you should. I'd love to hear what your results are off the back of this. I'm going through a bit of a journey myself, and I just feel like this is very much needed. This is how it's going to help you. If you're plateauing right now, go through the exercises that I have given you, and yeah, you will see the results in a very short space of time. So listen, thanks so much for listening in. Hopefully we'll see you again on The Business Strategist. And just before I go, if this is the first time that you're listening, congratulations. But what I would love for you to do is give us a follow or subscribe, leave a 1 or a 5-star review. We'd love to hear back from our listeners from around the world. Thanks so much and take care. Bye-bye.